Ever since the COVID-19 pandemic has begun, this question as to whether natural immunity is strong enough to be long-lasting or not has been on the forefront of the interest of specialists in health and the general public as well. And since the arrival of the vaccines against COVID-19, this question has also been, is natural immunity better, or is the immunity that we can get from the vaccines better? There have been a variety of answers so far. Most of them were best guesses from specialists in immunology. So far, we haven't had a lot of studies looking at the real-life answers to this question. Well, today we have such a study, and I want to share it with you in the next few minutes. It's a study in Israel. As you well remember, Israel was one of the first countries to start immunizations, and not only that, but to immunize a large part of their population against COVID-19. Most of the immunization they have done is with the mRNA vaccine made by Pfizer and BioNTech. The study that I wanted to present to you today is a study that has been published in late August. It's actually a preprint, so you have to remember that these preprints are not subject to peer review, or they haven't finished that process yet, so you have to keep that in mind. This is by no means a definitive word in the matter. Even if you were to be peer review, you usually want to see more than one study regarding a topic before you settle it, so to speak. But it provides some interesting answers. If you can look here at the summary of their results, patients who got the disease, who got COVID-19 between January and February of this year, experienced so far, when they studied them over time, experienced a 13-fold decrease of breakthrough infection with the Delta variant. In other words, those patients who got sick with COVID early this year have benefited from about 8 to 13 times lower risk of getting breakthrough COVID during the Delta age. They have done this study looking specifically at the period of the pandemic when the Delta variant have been prevalent. This is very encouraging news for those who have had the disease before they had a chance to be vaccinated. Now, I know there are a lot of people, including among you, who grace me with time watching and listening to these videos, that have certain reasons to not want to get vaccinated. And so a result like this could seem like, oh, we can't wait to get sick with COVID, the immunity is better, let's forget about the vaccine. And before you rush to that conclusion, I wanted to tell you a couple of things. Number one, as opposed to other infections where people can theoretically hold parties to get infected, to get natural immunity, in COVID, for COVID-19, this is not a good idea, because the mortality, especially above age 65, 70, 80, is unacceptably high. And second, if not more, but I'll stop at the second reason, there is a 5 to 10% risk of long COVID, which makes you sick for many, many months to come, maybe over a year, which affects your ability to function, to think, how you feel, how you can work or can't work. So not a good idea to look forward to getting infected with COVID-19. Even though natural immunity is better, you don't want to go there unless you have no choice or unless you've already been there. Vaccinations are still working very good. Just from Israel, and I may be able to make another video hopefully soon on that study, we have seen that with a single booster of Pfizer, the protection against infection, any type of infection, jumps from 50% all the way back to 95%. So in my book, with the safety record and the difference in mortality in long COVID between vaccine and natural infection, it's no brainer that the vaccine is the way to go. But having said that, this is very good news. Another good news in this study is the fact, as you see here a little bit lower in their summary of results, they have also looked at whether having the disease and being vaccinated is better. And what they've seen there is that indeed the best level of protection is among those who had the disease and have been vaccinated. It's really, really at a good level. So if you look at the strength of protection and nothing else and do a ranking on that, The best protection and the longest lasting is in people who had the infection, have been vaccinated. Next on the rank is those who had the natural COVID-19 infection, and next to that is those who have been immunized. All of these protections are good. Now, it's not to say that natural infection does not result in breakthrough cases, just like we see with the vaccines. Here in Science, for example, it's talking exactly about this issue, about more people getting COVID-19 twice. I've had patients who had COVID-19 infection twice. I've had patients who had COVID breakthrough infection after vaccination. So it can happen in both circumstances. Nothing is 100% sure. But having the disease and getting vaccinated is the best level of protection out there. The other quick thing I wanted to mention here is that, again, in this study, they have looked to see whether those who had the infection, if they had only one dose of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine, is that sufficient, or do they need to get the 2 doses? This is especially relevant in places like in my state of Washington and other places where there are currently vaccine mandates, even for people who got infected before. And so the question is, do they really need 2 doses? And the answer actually is no. One single dose has been shown to be very effective, more than sufficient to provide enough protection and boosting of the waning protection if the infection happened more than 6 to 8 months before. And hopefully the regulators here will listen and take that into account. In many places, like I believe Italy, France, Germany, and Israel, in fact, the mandate where there is one for vaccination recognizes that just 1 dose after documented previous infection is more than sufficient. So again, hopefully we'll see that become reality here. Last but not least, when we see studies like this, just like I said in the beginning, we have to look at the weaknesses. And there are a couple of weaknesses in this study that I have to mention, besides the fact that it hasn't yet been peer-reviewed. Number one, the sample sizes they looked at were not that large. The results were statistically significant, they are notable. I think they will stand. I think the question that I have there is whether what we see, that 13-fold drop, is real or whether it's less than that. We'll have to see more studies to answer that question more precisely. The second thing that I think is more worrisome for me in terms of the relevance of this result is that in their sample population, if you look at their data, there's a table with the demographic characteristics of the study participants that they present here. If you look at the age groups, and I know the text is blurry, it's just how it is here, but if you can see here at the over 60 years of age in their group, a little bit less than 5% of their study population was in that age group. I hope you can make that out, but it's about 5%. In the general population, people over 60 years of age represent a much larger share of the population. I believe it's around 30% or so, depending on the country. And so the 60+ years old were underrepresented in this sample. And so it's quite possible that if we increase the number of those people, the level of protection from the natural immunity would have been not so great. We know that as we age, natural protection, both innate and antibody mediated, decreases. And so again, the order of protection that natural immunity may provide in that older age group, where also infection with COVID is more dangerous, may not be as great as this study indicates. In any case, I think it's interesting to see that we have evidence that natural immunity works